Thank you so much, Maji. A very good afternoon, colleagues. Welcome to the Leadership Game with myself, Pat Mazibuko. A special welcome to our regulars and those that are joining us for the first time, and some that are directly on the Zoom, and those that are on Facebook and YouTube. Thank you so much. You know, colleagues, I often tell people that I am not a leadership guru. However, I do consider myself a passionate and a permanent leadership student. So, Dion, I've put together a personal quote, and it goes like this: things rise and fall in the hands of leadership, be it capable or incapable. That being said, I would want to outline today's theme, colleagues. It's about stakeholder and reputational leadership. And to us today, I want to acknowledge our panelists, Nonjabulo Mabaso, Nalosi Mawaki, Dosanda Chia, Mishek Tongwane, and Dave Zola. But most importantly, colleague, a special welcome to our guest speaker, who is regarded as a renowned reputational guru, a good friend, Leon Binerman. He calls him Ubabu Pagati. You can call him Ubabu Pagati. So why reputational leadership and stakeholder leadership, colleagues? Because we've got load shedding issues. Dion, why other people have not connected? They just moved from being load shed to this one, and also it's going to come back at 6, so at 6 and others go out. So I want to say that being a leader means more than just having a title. And it's one thing that I say to people. It also means upholding the reputation of the organization or of the brand that you represent, or that which you are the custodian of. So, colleagues, we've got about 1 hour, 58 minutes. I want us to make sure that we use it. So that being said, I just want to hand over to our guest speaker, Dion Bineman Uba Pagati. He may take over. You've got about the time that we've got when we finish, and then move on to our panelists, and then you can engage. Over to you and enjoy the show. Thank you.
Thank you. Can you all see the presentation in the background now?
Perfect.
Yes.
Perfect. Thank you so much.
Okay, super stuff. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome and thank you for the opportunity, Pat, for being able to talk to you this afternoon. So for the past 26 years, reputation has been my game, and I have been involved in all kinds of situations, from running workshops to speaking at conferences to sitting in boardrooms to speaking to people directly to writing about this stuff. And over the years, obviously, I've learned a lot of lessons. Now, the title is Your Reputation Matters. So this afternoon, I'm not just going to talk about organizational reputation or corporate reputation, some people call it, or just on stakeholder reputation. I'm going to talk about your reputation, because you as a leader or as an influencer or as a thought leader in your space have a reputation, whether you like it or not. The only person who had no reputation was Robinson Crusoe. Remember Robinson Crusoe? He found himself, surviving on the island with no human beings there. So I guess only the sea urchins were his stakeholders. But we all have stakeholders. And our stakeholders view us, listen to us, look up to us. And out of that, they develop a certain opinion or thought about us, our leadership style, and how we treat people. So this is really the aim of my session this afternoon. I want to give you some insight about reputation, some things that you can go take away, mull over, think about, and in the next few days, they're going to come back and haunt you. And if they do, that means it's triggered something in you. Feel free to interject if you want to ask a question. Just do the necessary. But here we start. So my first question to the audience would be, why is a reputation like a burning flame? And anybody can respond.
Just like the flame, the fire burns very fast. whatever said about you, it will run extremely fast from one place to another.
Ah, thank you. Brilliant. Brilliantly put. Huge flame.
Recording in progress.
So when you light the fire, and you have put little twigs, a little newspaper, or maybe some starter fuel to start your fire with. When you light it at first, when you draw that match, so that match, the equivalent of the words that you speak, the tweet, the Facebook post, the LinkedIn update, what you're saying people in passing or in conversation, can start a flame. Now, this flame is burning bright. It's burning very bright and it's very hot, but it's fleeting. It's fleeting. You know, and I say it's fleeting, but it can ignite other materials. And different materials burn at different temperatures. We know that if you know anything about a fire, which is a chemical reaction. So you can trigger through your words, your actions, your behaviors. You can make a quick impact, huge flame, but there's something else that can happen to that flame. Can anybody tell me what they think will happen to this flame?
Does it not burn out?
It can burn out very quickly. So, ladies and gentlemen, your reputation, you have taken all these years. I mean, there are people that go and they get PhDs, they work for an organization for 30 years, and then in one fleeting moment, sitting in a meeting, they make a decision that will impact their lives so severely in the years going on. With other words, your reputation can be destroyed in less than a minute. So the words, actions, and behaviors. But at the same vein, your reputation is reflected in the heat of the flame. When we make a fire, there's a little flash, and then it starts. Then we put on more and more wood, the good deeds that we do, so that that fire burn brightly and create a lot of warmth. So reputation is like a burning flame. It has a starter, but it can burn out very quickly, as you will see later on. So now, there are many definitions that have been thrown around. I like this one particular definition. There are many others that I can add to this, but let's start with the first one. All that is generally believed about your character. In other words, what is coming out of your heart. How respectable, your credit, your integrity, or how notorious you are. So in this definition lies a lot of words. Integrity. We throw that word around all the time. How notorious you are. You know, they even refer to, there's a guy that recently died who was a good friend of the late Jackie Salebi, the police commissioner, Glenn Agliotti, and they even say there, he was a renowned gangster. You know, and in banking circles and in finance, when you apply for a loan, your credit reputation, your ability to repay based on your past, plays a role, and respectability. I often see this. Especially in South Africa. The news come on at 8 o'clock. In Singapore, you stand, you wait, the train comes, it says 3 o'clock, the train arrives at 3 o'clock. 20 seconds later, the doors close, off goes the train. If you don't get in, you don't get the train. But in our country, and I say this with respect because we've got many, many troubles and whatever, what is your time reputation? Shakespeare spoke about the fact that I am my reputation. He also said, I have lost my reputation. I've lost that immortal part of mine. And what remains is bestial. Now, in corporate reputations and circles, we know that reputation is an asset and a risk. But what many people don't know is what the the latest surveys over the last few years have shown. Some surveys have shown that as much as 63% of the value of a listed company comes from its reputation, which is really the sum of all the intangibles. I mean, that is a huge component. And everybody in the organization actually works on that reputation, yet we delegate it to a small 5 people department called PR or corporate affairs, and we expect them to manage that because there's a belief in many companies that if we make a mistake, we turn on the tap, a media release, and we will appease the stakeholders. Reputation risk for the last 10 years have been one of the top 5 risks on any survey around the globe. And reputation risk in itself has become a whole debate. There's many people that will be saying, reputation risk, it is just an outcome of another risk, which it is. But there's also a great school of thought that says it is a strategic risk. And if you don't believe that it is a strategic risk, I urge you to go and study the Bud Light debacle right now, where Bud Light, at once the top beer in America and many other countries, have currently fallen back to about the 10th position through the whole rigmarole, the whole controversy around the Mulaney case, the transgender case, and putting that on their cans because they did not consider stakeholders. Later on, I might refer to the fact that reputation risk can actually be defined in 4 different ways. It is another definition to look at it. It's the reflection of an organization or a person over time as seen through the eyes of its stakeholders and expressed through their thoughts, their words, and their actions. So, ladies and gentlemen, here's the first words that we really need to unpack for you. Stakeholders. Is there anyone from our audience that can define the word stakeholder for me? Anybody care to define the word stakeholder?
I think in simple terms, it's anybody who has a stake in your company, whether it is small or big, such as an investor or a customer.
Okay, so there you've talked about the word stake. So what often comes up in groups, thank you for that, you often hear people say it's somebody that has an interest in your organization, but interest is not a sufficient word. So we have to unpack the word called stake. So there are many stakes, and let me give you an idea of the word stakeholder. The word stake is not the stake that you put through the vampire's heart or the stake you put on a weaver. It could be, for once, a financial or economic stake. But in other words, you'll hear people express, they bought a block of shares in a company, or we are a minority stakeholder, referring to shareholding. You'll see people stand with a document in their hand saying, I have a legal contract to a piece of land. I have a financial or economic stake. But that's not the only stake that's it. The media comes to a company and says, I'm writing about a particular case in your situation. Will you be transparent? The so-called public interest stake. There's also the moral stake. If you get up in the morning and you go work for a company and you go there with the times that you're supposed to be there, you have a moral stake in that business. Sometimes that moral stake is rewarded through money or recognition or whatever, but it is a moral stake. But then there's also another stake that we sometimes don't consider, and I call that the emotional connection stake. So the emotional connection stake, you often hear people speak about this and they say, when we lived in District 6 before we were forcefully removed. So they refer to their land the emotional connection to the land. And in fact, I was reminded of this when a couple of years ago, just before I sold my previous place, I was sitting on the lawn. I'd come back from a run one morning. I was sitting there and I was thinking about my kids are at the house. The house is large. It no longer meets my needs. Should we sell? Should we remain? And then I saw in my memory my two children running across the lawn. And I realized that I'm only holding on to this house because of memories. Memories attached to the land, therefore emotional connection to the land. So where this often plays out could be, for instance, in a land settlement court where an elderly group of people, let's say they've lived on the farm, you know, as workers, they've got a little area, and they've lived there for the last 60, 70 years peacefully. They have a tribal elder, and all of a sudden, a man wins Powerball, struck by luck or struck by lightning, and now buys this piece of land, and then he goes there and he presents a document and he tells him they've got 30 days to get off the land. And now we are faced with a very delicate situation, because now the tribal elder, who cannot speak the other person's language and has to go via interpreters, are trying to ask the person who's got the legal document whether they can stay on this land because the kids or the ancestors' bones are buried on the land. And we often find that in the area of community relations, where with dams in the mining industry, that becomes a very important issue. So when we talk about a word called stake in stakeholders, it's not an empty word. And now we also have to ask ourselves, when we work with stakeholders, when they see us, they make decisions based on the opinions and perceptions that they formulate. And they will express that through their thoughts, their words, and their actions. Yes, we do have an employee there acting in a rogue manner. He's not happy with his company, therefore he's drinking Coca-Cola in a Pepsi truck. Yes, in high-profile divorces, people may put those common number plates on. What kind of words are they using? What kind of slang when they refer to your company? I mean, I was once, and this is quite funny, but it talks a lot about leadership. I was in a workshop with a client, and one of the exercises we do in this kind of exercise and workshop situation was I divided the groups up into people up into groups. And then they had to go and sit down and metaphorically describe their organization. So, one person got up and said, our company is like a bullet train. So you think about a bullet train, fast, going in singular direction, doesn't stop at stations. This goes straight forward, doesn't listen to anybody because it only is directed in one way. So anyway, this young guy gets up. And he says, working at this company is like urinating in a dark suit. It's warm and nice and fuzzy, but it doesn't show. And immediately I realized something, that people's efforts weren't being recognized in that company. So what are people verbalizing? What do they visually think about you? Or are they only using your product because there's nobody else to use? Or maybe they're not happy with the service of your organization, but they're too lazy to move. And something that the ruling party is discovering right now. And we've seen this in the numbers over the last few elections, that where people originally stuck to one particular brand name, they are now starting to question. They are questioning. And this is why we're saying people must vote, at the ballot box. The actions. And yes, That baby, by the way, the baby that is showing you the finger, the baby that's telling the companies don't use genetically modified food in my baby powder, was actually used by an NGO against Nestle in West Africa. Please just mute yourself. Thank you. Was used by an NGO, an activist group against Nestle to do a genetically modified food. So now, that's one definition. But here's two more I want to give you. Two definitions that I think will really help you to go and think about what is the reputation of your organization, or what is your own personal reputation. It's a state of mind. So a state of mind, to define a state of mind is like clouds. You see clouds come on the horizon. In the morning, you don't feel well. You get up, you're feeling dizzy. You drink a glass of water, your blood pressure settles, you feel better. After a cup of coffee got you going, you feel even more better. Some people after breakfast feel much better. So state of mind can differ from time to time. It's like a balance sheet. So first of all, a set of memories. With other words, people, stakeholders, remember incidents for many years gone by. For some, it may just be what we call a black and white memory, so it's a black and white picture, but for some people, it's a movie in vibrant colors if you apply NLP to this. My wife, my dear wife, we've been married for 43 years. When we were courting, I think we were engaged, we were walking down the main street of Port Elizabeth, now called Kaberga, when her high heel shoe got stuck into one of the two cement slabs. And she tripped and she fell, but I was slightly ahead of her. And of course, you know, me with my funky sense of humor, gave a laugh. And she's never forgiven me for that laugh. So she had memories. That's why they say some people are like, have an elephant memory. Or perceptions, how I perceive you, and opinions that I have that is in my mind, in my brain. And if we were so successful in changing people's perceptions, beliefs, and values, I would be one of the world's foremost psychologists right now, or religious experts, because they're also in that game. But the second definition, for me, gives us a little bit more clarity on what and how to manage a reputation. And that is, it is the net result of all the interactions, of all the experiences, impressions, beliefs, feelings, and knowledge stakeholders have about a company, or a leader, or you, about you. But in other words, this definition gives us lots of info to work with. First of all, the word interaction. I interact with you. Pat and myself have interacted via email, via face-to-face. We have been on TV together. We are now in a virtual reality webinar situation. We've had all of these interactions. Sometimes we interact with another just via email. And then because we have not been taught, we write our email in capitals. And then the person writes back, oh, why are you shouting at me? What is my impression when I get to a company? Ladies and gentlemen, by the way, for my sins, I am, if you're going to read my profile, you'll see that I am multi-skilled in 4 different directions. One of these are occupational health and safety. In fact, I do some consulting work for a client on that. I arrive at a client, Northwest. I am been on the road for 2 hours. I need the bathroom very quickly. So I walk in, I go to the bathroom. But in my hurry, apparently, I went to the wrong bathroom. I went to the staff bathroom that was, from a hygiene perspective, way below best practice standards, very way below. In fact, so way below standard that I walked out of the building, got in my car, picked up my phone and phoned the company I'm doing the consulting work for and said, I am leaving here right now. I'm not doing the job. Because I really got angry because of the standard of the bathroom. And the client persuaded me to say, Dion, you there to make a difference. This happened many years ago. But my impression, when I went to the executive bathroom, it was sparkling, but the staff bathroom, and this is stakeholder management, was in a mess. And my impression of management immediately was dropped. The leaders dropped because a good leader, in fact, because of my experience in health and safety and also being in a medical field in the military, I go into a company, in the first place I visit these bathrooms because it tells me a lot. Yes, these days companies specialize, they have facilities managers, they have health and safety specialists. That doesn't mean nothing. I was in Braamfontein 4 weeks ago in an insurance company, a listed insurance company, where I had to phone the group facilities manager who's in Pretoria to come there, to come and check the bathroom. What is my impression of you and the way you treat people? My beliefs, now beliefs are internal. Feelings are internal. Knowledge is now the field of PR. It's the field of transparency, disclosure, information, communication, engagement. So if you look at that whole definition, we really only can influence experience, feelings, and knowledge. Feelings, we try and address that through, what you in PR, they used to call this the old Texas treatment. For those of you who've studied PR, in the old days in America, they had a cocktail party and they gave you lots of alcohol and little things to eat. And that's how they try to get you to your feelings. So feelings we can address through decor, reception areas, good food, all of that. But the two things, experience. When I would come in contact with a representative of your organization, that is where the brand or the reputation is established. My first contact point, maybe I go to the web. Well, in fact, 93% of all people these days, when they do business with a company, will research you via a search engine. With other words, saying that your first contact point is the web. And that means that your website has to be top-notch, it has to load quickly, and you need to be found. And this is a specialist area called SEO, search engine optimization. Then I might phone you. And therefore people have wonderful, telephonic systems. But these days, when you phone a company, you option one, you click on option one, you think it's the right option, then there are 5 more options. Can you imagine phoning suicide hotline and the lady says to you, or the option says to you, hold on. So, I'm not too sure about these telephonic systems. Anyway, that's called another touch point or contact point. Now I speak to an individual, contact point, call center. Or I come into a showroom, contact point. And now, knowledge. How do we inform, how do we educate our stakeholders in the process? So those are experience and knowledge is really the only 2 words where we can really directly impact when as leaders we work with stakeholders. Now this is all wonderful information here, and this is essential information for you to have in the background, for me to share with you some other things. This brings us to 3 key circles. I often get told reputation and brand is the same. Well, not really. Not really. And let me use the example here for you. let's say I'm a motoring journalist. I've spent the last 20 years working in newsrooms, but in the motoring industry. I am a well-known motoring journalist. I don't have the funds to buy the latest Porsche or latest BMW. But I can write about the brand, the car. And everything I say about the Porsche vehicle is brand reputation. So I can write about the brand reputation. But I don't work for the organization, so I have no clue what it's like to be an internal stakeholder, an employee, how I get treated in the workplace. Or I'm not the same as, if you're a supplier and you have a 600 million rand contract with BMW, they treat you very nicely. But if I'm the plumber who you quickly called because there was a leaking toilet and you've got visitors coming, and now I've done the job and I've written out my invoice and I expect reasonable payment terms because I'm an SME, they take my invoice and I keep on phoning, and the next thing, supply chain phones me 3 days later and says to me, sir, you didn't read the fine print. We only pay 90 days. With other words, I'm an elephant. I can trample you, Mr. Mouse. That's organizational reputation. And then there's the reputation with your various stakeholders, your interactions with the media, your interactions with the regulator, your interaction with activists, investors, suppliers, whichever your stakeholders that you have identified. And where the heart is really the reputational radar. But most people tend to focus brand reputation. Brand reputation. I hope this gives you some valuable insight. Now, earlier on I referred to you that the reputation risk can be divided into 4 different categories. Somebody is throwing a waving hand at me. Would you like to ask a question, or is it saying everything's okay?
Everything's okay. Lovely.
Cool. Thank you. So reputation risk. As I said, there is a debate. Is it a strategic risk? Is it a risk that is just an outcome of another event or an incident? Well, in my firm belief, it's both. But it's most definitely a strategic risk, because once your reputation goes, so goes your company. And I am on the same book as Lloyd's of London, which is the world's largest reinsurer. And that's how they view it. Now, since this is not a reputational risk workshop, I'm just going to say to you, there are 4 different types of reputation risk. But the one that is the most difficult one to manage is called stakeholder reputation risk. Ladies and gentlemen, if you want to know more about stakeholder reputation risk, please go to my website, www.dionbinneman.com. You'll see there's a whole section on stakeholder reputation that asks a lot of questions. But the problem is with stakeholders is that you don't always know how stakeholders are going to act, because that way called action or support is position-based. Let me demonstrate. When I was a child, I had a stepfather, a quiet man, an introverted man, a very strict man, a judge, basically a judge. And in my matric year, on a Wednesday, like the custom was, I went to my parents. They were sitting in the lounge. I said to my parents, can I go out on Friday night? I had to seek permission, blessing. Can I go out on Friday night with my friends? They'll pick me up at 7. I'll be back at 11. Yes, permission is granted. Wonderful. Friday afternoon comes, get dressed, polish, the whole works, ready to go out with my friends. And I walks into the lounge, and mom and dad's in the lounge. And as I say, Mom and Dad, I'm off. My father says, where are you going? And I said, well, I'm going out with my friends tonight. I did seek your blessing on Wednesday night. He says, yeah, you did. But unfortunately, the way you spoke to your mother last night at the table doesn't warrant that blessing anymore. Hey, stakeholders can change position very quickly. Then I worked with Vodacom, and Vodacom, please mute yourself. Somebody's mic is on.
Look, I don't mean to be insensitive, but am I the only one who heard about?
Sorry,
Sorry,
would you
colleagues,
please
sorry,
mute your
colleagues,
mic?
please, can I ask one of our attendees to mute as well? It's disturbing our guest speaker. Kindly mute. Thank you. You may proceed, Dion.
Thank you. So I work with Vodacom. So what happened 3 months prior? This was just before the listing. As you remember, that Vodacom was a spin-off out of Telkom, and Vodafone decided to buy. We're looking at buying into one of our telecommunications companies, and Vodacom decided to, Vodafone decided that they wanted a reputational risk dimension as part of the enterprise-wide risk management system for Vodacom. So that's where I came onto the scene. And I pitched, I got it, started working with them. They thought it would be a 2-day exercise. It turned out to be a 3-month exercise. Anyway, on the Monday morning before the listing was going to take place on the Thursday. I phoned the head of risk, and one of my statements were, do you have your stakeholders in the bag? Meaning, do you have all of their support? Because stakeholder management is about enlisting support. And he said to me, he says, yes, everybody's highly excited. That very evening, COSATU meets with ICASA, the regulator, file an urgent application interdict at the Supreme Court to try and stop the listing. They never saw it coming. Stakeholders can change position rapidly based on new information, whatever. With other words, you may go into a meeting, you may have gone before the meeting and got all of your rest of your colleagues or directors on your side. But then through last minute intervention or change, stakeholders might change position. And where stakeholder risk comes in is that risk between what stakeholders expect and what we give them. In fact, I define stakeholder reputation risk as the risk that emerges when the reasonable expectations of stakeholders are not met. If you work for an employer, you expect your salary to be deposited into your account on the 25th of the month. I'm using an example. You don't expect the IT system, you don't expect the data breach, you expect the money in your account so that your debit orders can go off. When you're a leader, you expect a subordinate to meet your expectations on a project. So stakeholders have to, please mute yourself. Stakeholders have reasonable expectations. Example, the media. When you get a media contact, the media phones you for an opinion, you need to understand that they do not work the same deadlines as you do. That's why the first thing we do in media relations is we say to the media stakeholder, what time do you need the information by? What is your deadline? In other words, to show respect towards the other person, to try and meet their deadline, even if just to send them a message to say, right now, our teams are investigating the incident. We have no further information for you, but we will come back to you just now. You meet a certain level of expectation. When you call such as in Diepsloot for a cabinet representative to come and meet with the leaders because of what's happening there, and it takes 4 days for a representative to arrive. Is that meeting reasonable expectations? That's all I'm asking. So this brings us then to something called the reputation iceberg. Now, ladies and gentlemen, I've deliberately tried to avoid some of our leaders in this picture. But a run on a bank, in banking circles, they will tell you that this is the reputation risk number 1. It is when depositors decide to withdraw their funds based on rumors, false information, or real information and take their money elsewhere. That is called a run on a bank. That is when you technically become insolvent, when you don't have enough deposits to cover your outflows. And that's when banks close, such as Northern Rock and some of the banks' situations. In our country, VBS Bank serves as another example. We have Mr. Tiger Woods, who at one stage was the world's #1 best paid sportsman of all time. He had over $1 billion worth of sponsorship, an unheard of amount annually. One particular night, the Bond lady in question, his wife, phoned the police station and spoke to the night representative and said, help me, I've hit my husband with a golf club. And they asked her how many times, and like typical golfers, I hope some of you here on the audience is a golfer. I'm not a golfer, but apparently golfers like to lie, and they say 5 or 6 times, and he said, I'll put you down for 6 anyway, mum. Anyway, 48 hours, 24 hours in fact later, stories broke the newsrooms worldwide that his wife, Tiger Woods' wife, attacked him because of a case of infidelity. Well, from there, the matter spiraled out of control. 48 hours later, news were coming in of more women speaking about the fact that they had affairs with Mr. Woods. In fact, 21 women came forward to say that they were romantically involved with Mr. Woods. Now, infidelity at that point in time was not seen as a social phenomena by many companies. And Gillette and Nike, the Just Do It company, were very clear that this was not something that they associate with, and they immediately withdrew 600 million rands worth of dollars worth of sponsorship. And soon other sponsors followed suit. 600 million in 24 hours. Mr. Woods, unfortunately, have never ever been able to go back to what it was. Ladies and gentlemen, please just check your mics. One person's mic is causing a lot of feedback. So if you can just mute yourself, it would be appreciated. So Mr. Woods never been able to come back. In fact, in the reputation risk circles, we talk of a period of 4.5 to 12.5 years maximum before stakeholders will forgive you. The blonde-haired lady in question is another example. I've forgotten what her name is, but she used to be the Greek long jump champion. She arrives in the London Olympic Games, unpacks her luggage, goes down to have supper, happens to sit in the area where there is a lot of athletes from West Africa, tweeted something relevant to the fact that there's more West Africans in London than in Africa itself, something to that extent. The London's ethics committee, who were scanning the airways and the social media and monitoring, which your company should be doing, felt that her words were not in the spirit of what the Olympics Games stand for. They approached the Greek Olympics Committee, who felt exactly the same as the London Olympics Ethics Committee, and 4 hours later she was sent back to Athens, all her hard work in vain. The gentleman in the middle there, his name happened to be Elliot Spitzer. Now, if you don't know who Elliot Spitzer was, let me give you a quick rundown here. Elliot Spitzer used to be the Attorney General of New York, one of the most influential positions in the whole of the US. He was the guy, the very first Attorney General who didn't use the courts of law, but used courts of public opinion, put media pressure on a guy like Morris Greenberg. Now, Morris Greenberg was the executive in charge and chairman of AIG, the world's largest insurer group, for over 40 years. But in other words, a man that had a huge position. And Mr. Spitzer used that medium, and he had a nickname.
Please, colleagues, for the rest of us that are just coming, make sure that you default to mute. Please proceed, Dion. I'm sorry about this.
Thank you. No problem. No problem. So Mr. Spitzer had a nickname, Mr. Clean. So during his tenure, an auditor, a young girl, an auditor fresh from university, now was asked to find a source document related to one of his credit card statements. Now, ladies and gentlemen, some of you in the audience, I would presume, might be have auditing experience. The difference between an investigative journalist and an auditor is slim. Both of them, both type of disciplines, teach the importance of following the money and following the trail and following the power. So this little girl goes.
Dion, can I interject, please?
Yeah.
Quickly, I just want to sensitize. We've got about 15 minutes left.
Okay. What? Only 15? 15
right, minutes left. Yes, sure.
Sure, but so she followed the trail and discovered that in one night of random madness, Mr. Spitzer had rented a call girl and paid with the wrong credit card, which, by the way, also happened to the Gauteng government official, head of finance, who was dismissed for using government credit card expenditure. We've had Steinhoff, we've had George Michael, we've had plenty full of examples of where reputation has been damaged. I mean, our cartoons in our newspaper even spoke clearly about this type of damage. We've had the Tour de France coming to an end tomorrow, but many years ago, there was a cyclist called Lance Armstrong that orchestrated the biggest drug scandal in the nature of the Tour. In fact, I stopped watching Tour de France for the last 10 years because of what he did. So what goes through your mind when you read about scandals, poor governance, dirty linen, leadership debacles, your connections, your involvement? You know, we had people saying during the Zondo Commission that yes, they were at the Saxon World Shipping. Yes, they did see the Guptas, but they sat with their backs to them. And then the experts triangulated that phone calls were being taken place, that you were in that environment. And it's called the law of association. Who you mix with, who you associate with, will impact your reputation. So, since I have very limited time at my disposal, I want you to think of somebody that has a bad reputation. I want you to think about, if you had a good reputation, what will it do for you? What would be the advantages to you? What would be the disadvantages to your organization? So here I want to refer you to Warren Buffett. 1991, Mr. Buffett addresses a venture capital house that he took over, Salomon Brothers. And he told the 300 money managers sitting there that if you lose money from my company, I will understand, but if you damage my good name, I will be ruthless. He then goes on to say these powerful words. But the problem is that I have faced is that at every conference, every business school session that I've attended, every speaker talks about the first sentence, but the power actually lies in the second sentence. And that is, if you understood that you've worked so hard to create your reputation, why would you destroy it? Why won't you do things differently? So, reputation is made up of your personality, who you really are, what you say you are, and what you do. So what do we know right now on this session? It's an asset, it's also a risk, and you've invested in it for many years. We know that it's perception-based, it's experience-based, it's expectation-based. And that means that your personal reputation is derived from how you treat people, your actions, your behaviors, your words, and impressions. Ladies and gentlemen, 7 years ago, I found myself in Beijing running a series of crisis workshops, doing crisis management, crisis communication. And one of my course representatives flew in from Hong Kong, which is a 5-hour flight, and her name was Florence Huang. She was the corporate affairs manager for Rabobank, Dutch bank for the whole of Southeast Asia. And I said to her, ma'am, I really respect the fact that you've come to this session, but why did you come here? What is your need? Because surely it's need-based, it's not me-based, because she doesn't know me. And then she stood up and she said, yes, I came to learn. I came to learn from you, sir. And I said, but you don't know me. So she said, hang on a moment here. I checked you out. And you come with a name. And then, ladies and gentlemen, she'll shared one of the most powerful stories I've ever heard. And that is, in Mandarin, there's a statement that says, your name will arrive at the destination long before you do. Best make sure you have a good name. And that is what reputation is all about. It's about the fact that what you say, what you do, and who you are must always be in alignment. But you have to understand that only a limited attention or single act of indiscretion can shatter that you've worked so hard on. It's called name recognition. If I hear you, what comes up in my mind? What do I see? What do I feel? Do I feel warmth when you hear the name? And that personal reputation of yours is made up of 3 elements. Your know-how, your intellectual capital, your social capital, who you associate with, who you know, and those who trust you. Those who trust you. So, who are your connections? Are you on LinkedIn? Who do you reach out to? Who do you connect with? Who do you hang out with? Plays a role in your reputation. Being at the forefront, making sure that you attend workshop sessions such as the leadership game, keeps your saw sharpened. That's your intellectual capital. How you treat people. Now, the only way you're going to know what others think of you is if you ask them, if you do research. And in companies, we sometimes do 360-degree feedback surveys. They hurt. They hurt when people tell you, but Dion, you weren't as good as what you thought you were. Yes, but how else can you grow if you don't know what you can do better? You know, it's related to something called the Johari's window. So how do you build your good reputation? Number 1, as Socrates said, start with the basics. Endeavor to be what you desire to appear. Don't be a gentleman and then have 2 Zamaleks and then turn into a monster. Keep to your promises. Keep to your promises. Be very careful how you communicate, via email, voicemail, and make sure that you treat everybody with respect. Ladies and gentlemen, it sounds so simple. It sounds so simple. It sounds so mundane. But I have seen people treat security guards with disrespect. Even car guards with disrespect. Respect starts by how you treat people. You earn respect. That bit of be discreet and professional. Now, how do we define the word professional? Is that we have to think very carefully about our roles as leaders. Our conduct and those whom we supervise, that our conduct is in line with best practice and with the laws of the land. In other words, that you are compliant with best practice, compliant with relevant rules. And you have to realize that the appearance of misconduct and impropriety can be damaging to your reputation. In fact, that definition here, the true meaning of being a professional is to adhere to the many standards, written and unwritten, of your profession. Whether you work after hours or during hours. What standard are you holding yourself to? Work your platforms, be active on LinkedIn, be active out there, get your knowledge out there, become a thought leader, be prepared to speak up. Mr. Mandela didn't care. He worked across disciplines, he worked across industries, but he was the first real influencer and thought leader. That is why he is still seen in reverence, because of the way he treated people. To him, it was crucial. Think about plants. Seed planting is absolutely crucial. I sit here in front of this screen this afternoon, and thank you for the opportunity, because of seeds that I planted many years ago. I found myself to China. I found myself to London because of seeds I planted. When I got to London to speak at the BCI, the world's largest conference on business continuity, I wanted to know from the organizers why I was chosen. And they said to me, you know what, Dion, we actually wanted you to come to Boston the previous year. I said, Boston? I've never been to Boston. I have been to the US, but not to Boston. Why me? She said, well, a lot of people over the world have said, you've got some knowledge and some thoughts they'd like to hear from you. Because of seeds that I plant. Every single day is seed planting. Every single interaction is seed planting. Every single day you're adding to your reputation or taking away from your reputation. So, ladies and gentlemen, your reputation is your biggest asset. For companies, it's their biggest asset. It's the sum of all the intangibles. You can make money, can always be made, but a name is like a fragile vase. Once destroyed, not easily put together. You got to think name recognition. When people hear your name, what do they think? What feelings do they get? What images go up in their mind? And unfortunately, we've had leaders in our country who in public environments have thought that they're bigger than their reputation. Well, unfortunately, it has not paid off. And the Zondo Commission and the fallout from the Zondo Commission have shown very clearly that you might get away with things. You might get away with fraud, collusion, conflict of interest for a while. You might be the big fish in a small pond, but sooner or later, rain comes and you get spilled over into the big ocean where all of a sudden you're no longer safe. I love this advert. I saw it many years ago in a book, tore it out of a magazine. But your goal in reputation should be, like that ad says, your flaw, your reputation, spotless. Your smile, the way you treat people, your personality, the real you is the one that leaves a mark, an indelible mark on people. When people say, you touched me, you reached me, that is your calling card. So to end off my little input on personal reputation for you to go and think about, I didn't spend too much on corporate reputation here, is like Steve Martin said, be so good they can't ignore you. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you, Pat. I'm open for discussion.
Thank you so much, Dion. And may I ask you to stop sharing for now? Thanks a lot. So, ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much. As Dion stopped sharing, I wanted to make a statement that in South Africa, we talk about power constraint, but we also should not ignore the fact that there's also time constraint. That being said, now, Dion, I want to allow our panelists to engage you. So that's why I'm asking you to stop sharing. So I'm going to start off with Nalosi. Nalosi, I want you to have your say on the issues of today. I want you to engage Dion. Be succinct. You know the game. Be the first one to go. Nalosi. Nalosi, did you get that? Okay, I don't know when Nalosi is at, but in the instance of time, okay, Nalosi, please come in.
That's what's load shedding.
Yeah, I can see that she's got her mic.
Let's get myself out here. Can you see me?
Yeah, please proceed. Nalosi, please proceed.
Can you hear me?
Now
Yes,
we can hear you.
Definitely. Thank you so very much, everyone. Well, Dr. Pat, thank you so much for having us today. And Mr. Benjamin, that was a fantastic presentation, and we really appreciate. I do apologize for the technical glitch. In regards to who I am, I do a little bit of brand management with Nalosi Premium Virtual Assistants. And today, my job is to just add on or augment to the conversation regarding stakeholder and reputational leadership. So I've had a lot of background with the banking industry. So some of my examples have to do with the banking industry. On 23rd of February of this year, an article came out that Standard Bank had dismissed 83 of their staff. That's 83 staff members. In this article, it stated that 8 were still under investigation and 200 of them had obviously gone through investigation, and of those 200, the 8 were out in the banking industry. In 2016, the same thing happened in Wells Fargo, where there was the Wells Fargo scandal, cross-sell scandal, where Nalosi would go into a bank, and instead of coming up with a check account like she wanted, we subsequently were opening 4 accounts for Nalosi that she didn't even ask for. So these staff members also dismissed for the same transgression. However, what was very interesting is that in this case, the 2 banks had very interesting results at the end of the same scandal, but very different results. Wells Fargo had a
she was breaking up badly there, unfortunately.
Yeah, we've lost Nalosi, but then I'll come back to Dion. I just want to bring one of the panelists, Dave Zola. Dave Zola, please come in and have your say on the issues of today. Come in, Dave.
Thanks, Dr. Pat. Good afternoon, everybody. I hope I'm audible. My name is David Zola.
We would want to see you as well, Dave.
You want to see me? Okay. I hope you can see me now.
Yes, thank you. You may
Can you
proceed.
see?
No, he's based like I am, so I'm happy.
Yeah, I'm in the cold Cape Town, so I'm forced to dress warm.
Okay.
All right. Now,
Please sit, sir.
look. Firstly, let me thank you, Dr. Mas, for the opportunity to engage, and also Dio. I think the presentation that you have delivered, you hit the nail on the head, particularly with the quote from Warren Buffett to say, it takes 20 years to build a relationship, but it can easily be lost and ruined, within 5 minutes. And that is true. And I want to also, in the context of South Africa, where we have seen, organizations having good reputation, also starting from their leaders, because I think for me, leadership plays a very important role, is an important factor in terms of, reputation of an organization. Just by way of an example, where the reputation was lost even from a leadership perspective. I think we all remember Jackie Silebi, who was the police commissioner from South Africa, and how he associated himself, with people that were in the wrong industry, in the drug cartel, fraud, corruption, and money laundering. Glenn Agliotti, who passed away not so long ago. Now, because of the bad leadership that affected the reputation of the South African police service, that has, carried right through the police service, because the leader did not show reputational leadership. The leader was not there to uphold values, to do things in the right manner, that even the employees within the organization, that started to filter right through. Now, if I ask you about the reputation of SAPS today, you will, have your say, incompetent, they're not polite, they're not professional in terms of how they do things. And when you start to think back, when was this actually lost? When was the reputation of the organization lost? It will go back to its leadership, that in over time we have not been able to regain that trust, that love, that passion, that hope that we have on the South African police service. And I think it goes back to what Dion was mentioning earlier on, in terms of the critical role that leadership plays, in terms of the company that you keep, in terms of our commissioner and the people and the company that he kept, so that had a huge effect in terms of how we now perceive, how we see SAPS in 2023, and how long ago, did we have Jackie Silebi as our police commissioner in South Africa. So I just wanted to add and meant to what Dion had said, and also just give real life examples. Of course, the examples that he had shown us, I think we're all aware, the Tiger Woods, the BPs, the Steinhoffs and the likes. But I thought, let's also add another example that will talk and will resonate with people in terms of what leaders can do to damage the reputation of the organization, particularly if they are not honest, particularly if they're not polite in terms of their approach, particularly in terms of what company they're able to keep. Let me leave it there, Dr. Mas.
I want to add to this, because it's very
Yes,
important.
please come in, Dion.
If you do root cause analysis, so root cause analysis in health and safety is known as the domino theory. But when you do root cause analysis, in every reputational risk case that I've ever been involved in, I do a root cause analysis. So everything goes back to the so-called first domino that will fall and push the other dominoes over. So the first domino normally can be called failure to adhere to workplace performance standards. So let's take recruitment and selection. If you a parent and your school needs a tour bus driver, so now Mr. Pagati arrives, he's got all the right credentials, he creates a good impression, he goes in there, he's got all of the various licenses. Fine, cool, create a good impression, they hire me on the spot, but they don't do proper reputational due diligence. If they did due diligence and they discovered that maybe I had a track record of drinking on the job, would that be the driver that you want to employ? No. Could a small guy like me be a wrestler in the World Wrestling Federation, maybe cannon fodder, but not a wrestler. Recruitment selection. So a basic standard of recruitment selection, competence, job description, job spec. What do we do in South Africa? We appoint a new minister of finance for 3 days. For 3 days. And the South African government pension fund, the 6th largest pension fund in the world, lost 99 billion rand after those 3 days. 99 billion rand through recruitment selection. What do we do at municipal level? We know that a lot of problems in the country is related to our municipalities. We interact with the stakeholders on the ground. Who do we appoint in positions? Cadre appointments. We don't appoint people based on competence. Surely you're not going to put a person in charge of a surgeon team, a neurosurgeon, if I don't have the skills and the competence to do the task. So we are flaunting the most basics, recruitment and selection basics. That's actually where it starts. And South African police is exactly where it started, where people are appointed in leadership positions. I'm not going to say I'm against development here. People need to develop, and to develop people from internally is the right way to go. But that means education, training, knowledge. I go into companies, I ask, reputation management, isn't it an elective? No, it's nowhere on the agenda. It's nowhere on the agenda. Yet reputation makes up 63% of the listed value. Mm-hmm. So how come it's not at business school? Because parts of it is in planning, parts of it's in supply chain, part of it's in HR, parts of it in strategic management, and nobody has a handle on it. And it shouldn't be an elective, it should be a must. My son-in-law works for an international company, a French-based company. 3 years ago, company is rated most sustainable company in the world. Do you know how much time he spends on weekends having to attend the various training requirements of his position? This company overspends on training and development. That's why they're number one. We don't spend enough. We don't spend enough on developing our leaders, plain and simple.
Yeah, Dion, let's proceed. I just want to bring in Lusanda. Lusanda, I wanted to have some say on the issues of today and also be succinct, seeing that we've got some time constraint. Lusanda?
Hey, that's load shedding, eh?
Yeah, it's a killer, man. Yeah. Lusanda? I think we've lost it. Let me just go straight to Mishek. Mishek, please come in from one.
Thank you. Yeah, good afternoon. I hope you can see me, Doc.
No, I can see you, I can hear you. Yeah.
Yeah, thank you very much for the opportunity, for inviting me to this great platform. And again, thank you to Dion. I think that was an excellent presentation and delivery. It was very much important, especially the issues that you touched on around reputation, the importance of reputation, and the fact that reputation, most of the organizations are seen in the eyes of their stakeholders. Now, if we agree that is the case, the question that we must answer is, why is it that we have quite a number of organizations that are not able to invest time and resources in looking after the interests of their stakeholders? Knowing exactly the fact that you've made here, Dion, that it really matters how your stakeholders look at you, and the fact that stakeholders can influence your image, the image of the company or your own image as a leader. So why is it that then you've got a situation where companies do not want to invest time and resources in this particular field? Because I would like to argue that there is no conflict between looking at the interest of your stakeholders as well as having good returns on investment, because a number of companies or leaders in a company, quite often they think that the best thing to do is to try and get to please their shareholders, to try and make sure that there are good returns for investors. But the question is just touching on quite a number of things that we've mentioned this afternoon, John. If you are to focus on that good returns for your shareholders at the expense of your staff, for instance, you touch on the issue of the toilet or the bathroom that was in a very bad state. The question is, how do you hope to sustain the financial being of your company? Because for your own sustainability, you need to have a good reputation, and part of you being in that position is how your employees, the employees of the company, the staff, and the other stakeholders view you as a company. So I think that is very, very important for me. And in our country, for instance, very good and practical examples again, just to add on what Dave said, we have seen what some companies that had a very bad reputation, we began to see some of the banking institutions dissociating with them, closing bank accounts simply because they could not afford to associate with such companies because of their reputation at the time. We have seen quite a number of auditing firms that were also affected because of associating with companies that had very bad reputation. So it is very, very important that as leaders and the leadership of a company, they take or do whatever they need to do to make sure that they safeguard the image and the reputation of the company. And one of those things is being strategic in the way that you do things. I think you've educated us about quite a number of things that you need to pay attention to. But I also want to add an element of being honest, and by being honest, I think you'll have the integrity that you need. So quite a number of companies, and I think when I saw you having BP there, I can't remember if it was BP or Total, one of the companies overseas where they had, I think, an oil spill in the ocean. And the CEO, yes, it's BP, yes, okay. The CEO was even recorded or had saying he wanted to go on holiday, and that affected the reputation of the company very badly and tarnished his own image. So it's very important that as leaders, we are careful and pay attention to everything that we do, because anything that we can do wrong, before I can hand over to you, Doc, I just want to cite an example, and again, just to support the question of integrity and honesty, because when you're honest, the people and your customers or your stakeholders trust you more than those that would be seen to be not being honest in their dealings. And I remember there was in South Africa a case of poisoning of food. I think it was Pick and Pay, where the CEO was leading that campaign, was leading in terms of sharing information as the leader of the company with members of the
Sean
company.
Summers. His name was Sean Summers.
Exactly. Yeah. Yes, exactly. And there you see a CEO that is very transparent, that is very honest, that tells the public exactly what is happening. So that is being strategic in your communication. You can either choose to do that or decide to try and hide some of the facts, try and hide the truth away from the public, and until it gets to be leaked, and then you find yourself in a crisis communication mode, when you could have been strategic and came out and faced the public and said, indeed, this is what is happening. However, this is what we're doing to try and manage the situation. Let me not say much about the gas explosion on Bridge Street that we've seen sometime in the few days. But all I wanted to emphasize the fact that as leaders, how we lead and how honest we are in our dealings and whatever we do, we need to be mindful of the fact that if you do not pay attention to your reputation, you are not paying attention to the sustainability of your own company. Because today, even your products cannot, customers will not want to buy products from a company that they think has got a very bad reputation. I mean, funding, investors, you know what is going to happen once they think that. But also on the licensing part, bad reputation may lead to your license being withdrawn, but also at the same time, your social license to operate your acceptance by host communities and wherever your operations are, it's also a factor in the whole thing. Thank you very much, Doc. I think, yeah, let me just stop there. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Mishek. So, Dion, I'm going to go to two of my colleagues, this is Lusanda and then Nonjabulo, respectively, and then I'm going to get back to you to respond. Lusanda, may I get you back again?
Hi, Sviso. I hope I'm audible this time. I've had to move to my phone rather than from my laptop because connectivity is an issue. Okay, so
Proceed.
let me see if getting on video is possible. If it's not, we'll see. Okay.
Yeah.
Am I visible?
Proceed. We can see you.
Visible.
All right. Thank you. Greetings, Dion, again, and to everybody that's listening today. I have probably as long a history as Dion has of work for the last 25 years plus. My area of expertise is managing stakeholder relationships for the purpose of managing risk for implementation risk for organizations. In other words, understanding how it is that there are no businesses that have no dependencies. There's no business that's able to function from start to finish without relying on stakeholders for key decisions, even if the decision is a simple one but powerful one of buying your services. But in other environments, for some companies, it's about investment, it's about policy decisions that enable, and all of these things. And I want to go back to something you said way at the beginning, Dion, before you even started your presentations about why is this actually important? So what? So you have a good reputation. What is it that it enables you to do? And what doesn't happen when you don't have it? And for me, a concern is organizations that fail to understand that you, as a manager, any manager, you can't implement from start to finish without mobilizing, with support, mobilizing decisions that enable what you do. So you have to be an expert at establishing relationships, at sustaining relationships, investors, regulators, service providers, team members, clients. And unfortunately, in the world of even institutional relationships, it's the same even in personal relationships. You reap what you sow. So if you have an attitude of disrespect, you build mistrust everywhere you go. You have an attitude of hate. You're a big company. You can trample over stakeholders when you have the power. Guess what's going to happen with stakeholders that have the power over you? Is that they're going to reciprocate with obstructive behavior. They're going to drag their feet on enabling decisions for your business. They will upset key milestones in your progress and deliverables. They'll resort to outright power play. If this is the attitude, and key to this is what Dion is talking about of personal reputation and what you stand for as a manager and how that translates into the ethos of the business that you work for. If the attitude of that business is that, you will understand how you're going to be rolling, tripping yourself up, kicking the can down the road on an endless journey of just having to of disruption to your business and having to try and damage control after things have gone wrong every single time. Now, and for me, it starts with holding ourselves accountable to understanding that we are responsible for, if you run your own business, your personal reputation matters, but even in an institution where we are managing institutional relationships, it matters how you conduct yourself. And how and how you build and establish relationships, and how you are perceived and position yourself in dealing with stakeholders. Far too many organizations leave stakeholder relationships to chance, assuming that compliance will happen at the appropriate time. If you want a story, think Sanral and Etolds. You think that it doesn't matter, people will simply comply when the time comes. And when they don't, you fail, your business gets disrupted in very significant ways. So for me, it is about understanding that the journey to a good reputation is not about waking up one day and people think well of you, but about training, about a sustained effort, about being systematic in how you do things, how you pay attention to your stakeholders, understanding what your business needs from who, understanding their interests and expectations, making it your business to actually do so, and engaging early ahead of time before you're pushing them into a corner for a decision where they will react in ways that are potentially damaging to your business. And then it becomes a matter of power play, who can win at the end of the day. That is the comment that I would make at this point, that it is about holding yourself accountable. It is about being systematic in your role as a leader in the business that you work for. It's very important for me, for those practitioners in the businesses and how they position what we do in this space, that it is important. It's important that you have the ear of the leadership in the organization, that it is the CEO's ear that you're hearing. It's executive management that must lead this in organizations, because it is the very culture of an organization. That is what is going to inform your ability to create a network of positive relationships that can enable your business over time. It happens whether you're an individual business owner or you are working in as a part of a leadership team. That is how significant it is. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Lusanda. I want to go to Mazibuko. Mazibuko, please come in.
Thank you so much, Doc. Colleagues, good afternoon. Please let me know if you can hear and see me.
We can hear you, we can see you.
Thank you so much. Mr. Dion, thank you so much for a very beautiful and profound presentation. I just want to come in. I mean, a lot has been said around corporate reputation. I just want to come in from the angle of just holding themselves, accountable. Just borrowing from what Ms. Lusanda has just said, that I think what is very, very important as leaders is that—
to just interject, Jabulo, please push the camera, the screen a little bit back so that you can see your face. There you go. Thank you so much. Proceed.
That's better. Thank you. Thank you. There were a lot of examples that Dion made just to drive the point of managing one's reputation. And the first the first story that came to mind was one that I heard of when I was a little girl, of Hansi Cronje, how he actually ripped apart his career all because of one silly decision. It could have been driven by greed, and it could have been driven by the fact that when he needed to apply wisdom and stick to the values that have carried him so far in building a very beautiful and reputable career, and everything went down the drain because he did not uphold the values that he had. And so I think treating reputation as a personal brand is what will help the rest of us, conquer, whether we are planted in communities or religious groups, or even in corporate South Africa, or even in the global space. Treating your reputation as a personal brand and being intentional in building your brand is what will help us, having a proper brand story that you continually retell and allowing yourself to evolve around the story that you tell. One of the articles that I was actually reading by Glenn Lupesi actually states that as a leader, you control your reputation to be well-intentioned about generally serving the need of others. And you will not only have a leg up on managing your reputation, but you will also begin to advance your career. And so having a good reputation, it actually creates a room or a pathway to be respected by your peers and to also advance in your own career. One of the public figures that also came to mind when we were talking about, scandals in South Africa was Malusi Kigaba. Melusi was still is a brilliant gentleman who had carried himself very, very well, you know, in comparison to his peers. But by not sticking or not applying the wisdom when he needed to, one mistake, one opportunity of greed, and not holding yourself accountable, just going back to what Ms. Lusanda said, not being accountable to yourself or anyone else, perhaps, then leads to a greater fall, you know. And so I just want to just keep reiterating that holding yourself accountable is important. And that will allow you to manage the entry and exits and your spaces, the places that you expose yourself to, the people that you are allowed to influence your thoughts, the people you are allowed to influence your behavior, you know, even the places that you influence. It all boils down to accountability and just having values. And again, I cannot stress this enough. I think all leaders, wherever you are, respect and regard is very, very important. To respect yourself, to have values and a value system that is so solid and that cannot be shaken by anything or anyone, no matter where you are placed, is very important. It will take you very far in your career. So Dr. Pets, I'll just stop there. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. Before I go to Dion, please allow me to bring in Nalosi again. As Nalosi is trying to connect, Dion, after Nalosi, I'm going to want you to talk to the following points. One, I wanted to express or give more expression on the issue of the investors on a particular organization and the company. Secondly, Dion, I would want you to talk to us about the issue of the industry captain or the group chief executive, if he or she has got to take a decision of falling on his or her sword, should there be some reputational issues. But for now, let's hear from Nalosi and then we'll get back to you. Nalosi?
Thank you again, Dr. Pat. So I do apologize for the interruption in connection. As I was talking about the Wells Fargo scandal and versus the Standard Bank transgressions, the two banks had the same familiar transgressions for their staff. The two banks fired the staff. But the biggest difference between the two banks was the fact that leadership had acted in two very different ways. In the case of Wells Fargo, there were whistleblowers, and the leadership took its own time to actually go ahead and investigate this. And on top of that, they made the investors, they're one of the biggest stakeholders, fools by reporting that their accounts were growing and their attrition rate was slow. It was just a mess in terms of how they handled everything, as compared to Standard Bank, where they were on the ball, they got rid of the bad apples, they protected their investors, they protected their customers. It was a matter of how leadership handled the whole situation. Without the right leadership with integrity, leadership that has ethics, leadership that has respect for their stakeholders, nothing will ever come right. It is so imperative that we recognize that our reputation as leaders, what we do is our brand. Our reputation is directly proportional to our companies or our divisions' bottom line, our profits. And our stakeholders have the power over us to do what they want to do with their funds that they have. They have the power to walk away from us because of our reputation, because we do not uphold the values that we say we have, because we do not live by our mission statements. Because of that, as leaders, the C-suite, which is your CFOs, your COOs, your CEOs, do not have a place at that table without our stakeholders. But we tend to, as leaders, forget that and think that we are beyond or we are above all of that. And it's extremely important that we understand that our reputation, even at a personal capacity as a CEO of a business, really does follow you, as one of my panelists actually says. But it is so imperative. There is a man who was very, very wise who said to us that things rise and fall in the hands of leadership, be it capable or incapable. Thank you, Dr. Pat.
Thank you, Nalosi. Without any further waste of time, let's go back to Dion. Over to you, sir.
Okay, so I would like to start with a statement by Maya Angelou, the famous African poet, who said, "People will forgive you for making mistakes, but they will never forgive you for not caring. And that powerful statement has to permeate decision-making. Now, Dr. Pat, you spoke about CEOs falling on their so-called sword. When we make decisions, I have a problem with decision-making because, you know, there are books like Bliss and Thinking, you know, the Malcolm Gladwells of the world and the Kepler-Trigo methods of decision-making. I believe that there's 4 legs to good decision-making. Number 1, we always ask, you know, hoeveel gaan het kost? How much will it cost? The monetary aspect, you know, talking to our investors because they into return on investment, they into the cost factor. Is it compliant? But not just compliant with the laws of the land. Is it compliant with best practice? Because people misunderstand the word compliance, in my opinion. And then thirdly, is it practical? Can we use it in our organization? But the 4th leg of good decision-making is the one we seldom give a thought to. And that is, how will my stakeholders respond or regard me when I make that decision? And we have seen this numerous times. When all of a sudden a company makes a decision, the next day there's a wildcat strike. I sat in a board meeting there in Sandton, in the heart of Sandton, where there was an issue. My job was an independent observer. I was drinking a cup of coffee, ice cold coffee like I was drinking now. And when the chairman said, this was a company listed on the 2 stock exchanges, when the company said, the chairman said, this is a storm in a teacup, and I choked. And 2 days later, they choked when they had lost 2 billion rand on market capitalization. Because they did not regard the stakeholder. So when we make decisions, do we factor in all 4 legs? Now, investors, shareholders, a good example would be, if we only keep our shareholders happy, and that's one of our panelists have spoken about this, if you only focus on keeping your number 1 shareholder or investor happy, we currently sit with the situation of the power in our country. 20 years ago, why did the management teams then not speak to the major shareholder government to say that they needed more money for maintenance when they knew that was already an issue? You have to become bold. You have to stick your neck out like a tortoise. You have to speak up. If I see something wrong in my area, we find this in health and safety. You know, when you talk to people and you say, why did you not report an incident? Why did you not report the unsafe situation in the company? The people say, oh, I didn't think it was my responsibility, or it wasn't my place, or I didn't want to create waves, or I'm going to be seen as an impimpi. No, we have to stand up and start to become more bold in our dealings as South Africans. We know that there's lots of things wrong with brand SA right now. Why are we not speaking up, more vocal, more volatile? Change happened in this country when the greenhouse effect kicked in. Change didn't happen just from the top, it happened from the bottom. If you think about the change that happened, the pressure became so big like a volcano that South Africa had to change. So why are we not doing the same thing again? So, but when it comes to leadership, we need bold leaders. We need leaders that are prepared to stand up, speak up, and if they're wrong, to admit that they're wrong. And if they're wrong, to stand down. That is what real leaders do. But today, leadership seems to be rewarded when they do certain things. So now, a few things I just want to point out that I didn't get time to cover, and I think it's very important. I have been part of panels and groups where we've done reputation case analysis, domino theory, root cause analysis. Ladies and gentlemen, think seriously about induction or orientation or whatever you call it. I have been involved the last few years doing conflict of interest workshops on the governance side for a couple of clients. It's incredible that when I work with senior people, senior executives, people who have 3 times more qualifications than I have, that they do not understand what conflict of interest really means. Even my own son, and I want to share an example here. He's 36 years old. He's a digital marketing manager. He also runs his own company, and he has written approval from the CEO to do so because it's not in the same, but it accentuates his work. He designs websites. One night, and I'm still awake at 12 o'clock at night, busy doing reading, my son phones me, 35 at the time. And I say to him, like how a dad is. And I said to him, hey boy, why aren't you in bed yet? And he says to me, Dad, I'm 35 years old. I said, wonderful. But let me teach you something about conflict of interest. In conflict of interest, there's also something called conflict of commitment. He said to me, what's that? I said, example, you are working on your own projects right now, but you need sleep because tomorrow you need to go to your bread and butter, which is your daytime job. Don't find yourself sitting in a meeting, not participating because you're tired from the night before, because that is then a conflict of commitment. So conflict of interest, misunderstood. Induction orientation. I've been part of situations where even the MEC for finance of the Gauteng government was dismissed a few years ago for using credit card for personal expenditure. And in his disciplinary hearing, he admitted to a very crucial mistake. He said he signed the ethical code of conduct. He didn't properly read it. So I find that many companies don't spend enough time on induction orientation and code of conduct, professional conduct. We think people know, but do they really? So I really urge your audience that if you work with organizations, they really got to rethink orientation, induction, or code of conduct, especially when you bring new directors on board, new senior executives, that you brainstorm and workshop code of conduct, because that sets the tone. In the military, you attend what they call the first 6 weeks. It's the same in every military regime around the world. They will not only physically, but psychologically culturize you to the way of the military way of thinking. It's brilliantly done in all, whether you're a Marine, a Navy SEAL, a Spetsnaz, the Russians, or South African reconnaissance, or any of those commanders. They do it so thoroughly. They don't know. You need to make your bed. There's a wonderful video on YouTube, Dr. Pat, if you haven't seen it or you haven't showed it to your audience, brilliant video on why soldiers must make their beds.
I've seen it number of times. Yes.
I saw that video 7 years ago, and you know what? I watched this video and I was like gobsmacked. I was like, I spent those years in the military. Never once did they tell me the reason to make my bed. If they told me why, I would have made my bed properly. So a lot of problems that we face as leaders is because we are very good at telling people what to do, how to do it. Spend more time on the why. And here I urge you to go and check out the works of a management consultant, Simon Sinek. If you haven't read his book, Why, or seen his videos, brilliant.
Thank you so much, Dion. And I'm going to go back to the panelists, but I'm going to be strict on time because at 5:02 we've got to stop. So Nonjabulo, I wanted to come in first. I wanted to tell, let's go through what I call now call to actions. So Nonjabulo, you have just 45 seconds. What kind of call to actions can you make with regard to the subject of today? Nonjabulo?
Thank you, Doc. I think acquiring more knowledge and getting more trainings as far as maintaining and managing one's reputation is important, so that wherever you are, like I was saying, whatever sphere or whatever industry that you find in whatever position that you find yourself in, your values will never fail you, and your values never leave you. And having the ability to always apply wisdom so that whatever it is and whatever decision you have to make, you don't rob yourself. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Nonjabulo. That was very succinct. Shall we then go to Mishek? Give us your call to action, Mishak, and also be succinct.
It's going to take 20 years. Mishak, succinct with time.
Mishak, please. Somebody is talking.
Okay, yes. Yeah, thank you very much. Yes, I hope you can hear me.
Yes, I can.
Yes, thank you very much. I would like, my call to action is actually related to something called stakeholder capitalism. And I think Dion did touch on this a bit earlier. Something that says, you no longer need, you really have to pay attention also to among the key stakeholders, your employees, because if you do that, I think Richard Branson says it's very, very well to say, if you look after your employees, you may not need any budget for advertising because they are the ones that are going to make sure that they market your products, they speak well about your company. So anything, I think your employees are very key to these things. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Shall we then go to Nalosi? Your call to action, be succinct as well.
Call to action. Decisive leadership and integrity is absolutely imperative. And as Meshach said, the voice of the employee is as important as investors and other stakeholders, because without your staff, you are nobody. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Then let's go to Lusanda, a call to action, ma'am.
Thank you, Sliso. I would say that this is not a soft skill. It is a difference between you being able to implement and activate your strategies and actually lurching from crisis to crisis, trying to do damage control with PR after the horse has bolted. Invest in the learning, invest in management and your whole company actually acquiring the skill. It will be a game changer for the business going forward.
Thank you so much. Shall we then go to Dave?
My call to action, I think it's for leaders to much like other colleagues have indicated, equip yourself in terms of how to manage the reputation of your organization, because it does have a direct impact in terms of the customers that you have, how people relate to you, how your customers relate to you. I also want to indicate that, with the advent of social media, people can destroy your reputation, your company at a click of a button. So if you are beyond reproach and you don't care in terms of how you treat your employees, customers, etc., you can lose everything at a click of a button. Social media is a very powerful tool that can damage. Thank you.
Thank you, Dave. I want to go back to Dion. Dion, you've got between now and 5 to, at 5 to, I need to turn back to me, but I want to answer the following, Dion. And I'm going to introduce what I want to answer with a statement.
Okay.
It says, until we learn, history will repeat itself. I'm going to repeat the statement. Until we learn, history will repeat itself. That being said, what are the start, continue that you can basically give to us as a contribution? You've got between now and then about 1754.
I think a lot has been said by the panelists, and thank you for your inputs. David Glass, ex-chairman of Walmart, said these famous words: reputation is so important, it must be protected at all cost. All cost. With other words, realizing that reputation is your greatest asset, your biggest asset, and yet your biggest risk, as this was just pointed out a moment ago. And that means assets are invested in, assets are looked after, assets are not depreciated. Reputation cannot be outsourced, it cannot be depreciated. In other words, you need to go and sit down and look at it again, analyze your reputation and say, where's my shortfalls? What can I do to rectify it? Yes, the answer does lie in learning and development. And learning, if you know anything about adult learning, it goes through a cycle, moving from unconscious incompetence to conscious competence. But now the experts have come up with a new statement called unlearning. Unlearning means you need to go back and go and take a look at where you stand right now and say, where am I short? What can I improve? I've heard the importance of values. Values are like a beacon. But where's my shortfall? What am I not doing? What standards am I not doing? Leaders are like waterfalls. Waterfalls flow from top to bottom. We set the tone in our organizations. We lead from the front, or we're supposed to lead from the front. But if we don't know, as the one leader said, there goes my people, I better follow them. If you don't know what's happening to your internal stakeholder, your people, how can you move forward? Call to action for me is very simple. You got to make your reputation a mantra. If I do this, what will people think of me? How will I be regarded? How will I act? And will they support me? Yes or no? If you think about those words at all times when you make decisions, when you factor the stakeholder and you factor your personal reputation in, that is when people sometimes sit in board meetings. As a company secretary, I studied to become a company secretary at the early part of my life. I switched and I decided to study other stuff. But as I've acted as an assistant company secretary, when you sit there as a manager and you believe that the management team is going into an opposite direction, you have the right to state, I am not in agreement, Mr. Scribe, please note the following, I am not part of this decision. You got to be bold, not difficult, but you got to be bold to say, this is what I believe. And if you feel that you cannot work with a certain group of people, then don't work with those people. Be clear to your values. I really love that statement about your values must really drive you and really reflect your values. The problem in most companies is value statements are artifacts. They're on walls. A quick story. I was working with, many years ago, a West Driefontein gold mine out in Carletonville. I was busy involved in a change exercise. Walked with the shift boss. I said to him, what are the values of this mine? He pulled out this little plastic laminated thing and he started reading from it. And I said to him, no, I want to know the values from your heart. And when I heard the values expressed by him, I quickly realized that there was a dichotomy between what was written here and what he stood for. You got to be clear and you got to live your values. Really love what was said earlier on. That is really my call to action. Stand up for what you believe in.
Thank you so much, Dion. Colleagues, at the leadership game, we make sure that we use time wisely. So it is about time now that we go to Nalosi to issue a vote of thanks. To Nalosi, can you issue a vote of thanks for us? Are you there?
Definitely. I'm definitely here, sir. Now, ladies and gentlemen and esteemed panelists, as we come to the end of this thought-provoking online event on stakeholder and reputation leadership, I come before you with immense gratitude for your attendance. Firstly, I extend my heartfelt appreciation to our exceptional host, Dr. Pat Mazibuko, for guiding us through this enriching session. Thank you, sir. Thanks also to our esteemed panelists and our amazing guest, Mr. Dion Benerman. Your profound insights and experiences spark transformational ideas and effective stakeholder engagement and reputation management. Your wisdom has been truly invaluable, sir. We've explored the vital nexus between leadership, stakeholders, and reputation, a cornerstone for sustainable success. Let us carry forth the knowledge gained here, becoming champions of ethical conduct, transparency, and genuine care for all stakeholders. Remember, a sterling reputation is built not on words alone, but actions that mirror our values. Furthermore, to continue the learning journey, I invite you to please follow us, the TLG 365 group, on YouTube, on Facebook, as well, and on LinkedIn. There you will find a treasure trove of videos featuring discussions with industry experts, thought-provoking talks, and practical tips to enhance your leadership skills. We are building a strong community of leaders dedicated to making positive impact on our organizations. Now, additionally, so please, I encourage you to stay connected with us. We are starting a once a month newsletter where we share further insights, resources, and upcoming events. This will be communicated on our WhatsApp group. Thank you once again, and let's embark on this journey of growth and leadership together.
Thank you so much, Nalosi. Colleagues, the next TLG 365 session is on the 19th of August, same time, same place. And our theme that time, Dion, is data leadership. I just want to give you a little bit of some nuggets that you're going to get there. Is the fact that data is the new oil. And as data is the new oil, and I'm always advocating that as an organization or corporate South Africa, it's all about data-driven decision making that we're going to be talking about amongst others. That being said, thank you so much, and let me wish you well and a very good evening. Thank you so much. Goodbye. God bless you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.